Thank you, Richard, for that warm welcome. Good afternoon again. How is everyone this afternoon? Well, thank you for being here. You know, it's both exciting and an honor to be a part of Jacksonville Urban League's 39th annual Equal Award Opportunity Luncheon. For almost 7 decades, the Jacksonville Urban League has provided significant opportunities for educational, professional, and yes, personal growth to thousands of constituents who wanted a hand up, not a handout. From its continually improving Head Start program that puts children on the path to educational and later career success, to empowering individuals, neighborhoods, and communities in attaining social equality through home ownership, job skills training, and entrepreneurship. The League promotes a sustainability that benefits all of Jacksonville. So on behalf of Wells Fargo, we are very proud to partner with the Jacksonville Urban League as we strive in our own vision of sustaining the social and financial health of each community we serve. With these goals in mind, it's a privilege to introduce today's keynote speaker, my Wells Fargo colleague, and I proudly say that, Anika Kahn. Well, let me tell you a little bit about Anika. And she made sure I would get this right? She threatened me. So, I heard earlier, we recognized some Florida A&M alumnus, right? So she's a Florida A&M alumnus. Give her a hand for that, there you go. And she threatened me to make sure I got this right. She's also a member of the Delta Sigma Theta. There you go. Did I get it right? Okay. With a master's in economics from the University of North Carolina. And I also forgot to mention, although she'll claim New York is home, she's homegrown here in Jacksonville, right? She's got family. Anika's been a person to watch throughout her career. From sales in the trading floor to putting together well-received economic forecasts and being asked to share her views with President Obama's economic advisors, our frequently quoted speaker has done extraordinary work. And as she continues to work on economic issues, she also plays an important role in Wells Fargo's Diversity and Engagement Council, where she's promoting diversity and inclusion initiatives that encourage professional growth while enhancing the bank's performance in diverse and increasingly competitive marketplace. Today, Anika Kahn will share her insights on the increasingly connected global and local economies and how the issues of today may affect us on a community and individual level tomorrow. So ladies and gentlemen, please join me in a warm welcome for our keynote speaker, Anika Kahn.
Well, thank you so much for that introduction. And yes, I am a member of Delta Sigma Theta, but I wore pink just in case for others. We look well and we look great in other colors. I definitely wanted to say thank you to Dr. Danford and as well as our Wells Fargo team members, including our board chair. Will our Wells Fargo team members please stand? Where are you? Right there. Yes, thank you. And definitely thank you to the rest of the board, staff, and volunteers, as well as our elected officials that are here today. So we are in the middle of something very interesting. And for economists, this is a great period of time to analyze. There are a lot of moving pieces that are going on. And we have the opportunity to not only consult and advise White House officials, but also our institutional clients, our wealth clients, and everyone has the same question. What will the election bring? What does 2013 bring? And so I thought I would just very briefly just talk about some of the moving pieces that we can expect, what we're thinking about it, and how it will impact not only the nation, but also talk just quickly about Jacksonville. And I assured Dr. Danford I would make sure that I did it quickly. And so from that standpoint, we of course have our election on November 6th, and it doesn't really matter what side of the aisle you sit on. We want to make sure that you vote. Of course, we have this idea of fiscal restraint, some may even call it a fiscal cliff, that is coming upon us, an expiration of a number of programs that will be very interesting as we enter 2013. We already know that we're in a very slow growth environment. GDP in the second quarter grew at only 1.3% annual pace. What does that mean to you? Well, anything below 3% is a slow pace growth. And we think in 2013, once we begin to roll back some of these fiscal policies, that we will actually see even slower growth. So what's on the table that will be discussed? And it becomes very interesting as we enter this lame duck session. So the question is, will we actually get anything done during the lame duck session? Because you may be familiar with this idea of the sequestration, which fits under the fiscal restraint, which is across the board tax cuts that don't necessarily fit in anyone's wheelhouse. No one will actually end up in a better situation if the sequestration actually goes through. And so from that standpoint, many are forecasting that some type of grand compromise will happen as a result. We really hope so. But there is also, the other side of the coin that says that we probably won't be able to get our Congress to be able to agree on exactly what our debt and deficit looks like. We actually won't be able to get a surplus, but we're trying to move to stabilization, and that is going to take time. And so many economists continue to talk about this toggle between slow growth and austerity. And the U.S. is not the only country that continues to be in this conundrum. Of course, you're very familiar with what's going on in the Eurozone and in Europe. So this is global economic growth that has slowed, and everyone is confronted with this toggle between growth and austerity. So when you have austerity measures and you have to get your debt and your deficit in check, that means you're doing it at the expense of growth. And so we should expect slower growth. And we've become very accustomed with slow growth since, of course, we've had the downturn and we came out of it in June 2009 into this slow growth recession. I'm an adjunct professor as well, and one of the things that I teach my students is this would normally be called a growth recession because it is very well below the long run trend that we talked about. So if we were to look at all of the components of the fiscal restraint, one of the things that is very clear is that in January 2013, we will start to see a tax on the Affordable Care Act personal tax. It's not going to impact all of us. It's going to impact those households that make over $250,000 a year. So in addition to that, there is the payroll tax cut. And many economists do not expect for this payroll tax cut to actually be extended. We also have the emergency unemployment taxes or emergency unemployment benefits that are also on the table to be rolled back, as well as the 2001-2003 Bush-era tax cuts. And it really depends on who gets in office. What will essentially end up happening between who will be cut, the middle income or the upper income, and how that will actually play out. And finally, there's the alternative minimum tax. So there are a lot of things that are on the table, and we have to be able to expect that all of these components will not be passed, and it will impact us in some way. In fact, if we do not push on some of this fiscal cliff or fiscal restraint, the Congressional Budget Office suspects that we could shave as much as 2 percentage points off of economic growth. I already told you we have a very slow growth pattern already of 1.3%. And so if we're talking about shaving more, we're talking about flat to negative GDP. Now, we're not calling for a recession, of course, but this is a critical time period, and this election is very important. And so making sure that we only vote is not the only thing, but making sure those in our center of influence also vote is going to be very critical. So I wanted to quickly talk about just some quick trends overall. We talked about the short term, this fiscal cliff, and in fact, the Federal Reserve Bank of San Francisco forecasts that uncertainty as a result of the election and fiscal cliff, this would add 1 whole percentage point to the unemployment rate. And so you start to get this upward number. So there's all of this discussion around, is 7.8% unemployment rate, is that true? Regardless, a 7.8 unemployment rate is a high unemployment rate that we need to be concerned about. Now, even before we got into the recession, there were a number of secular trends or long-term trends that we needed to be concerned about. And then on top of that, we added the severity of the recession. We have an aging population. Of course, the question of Social Security was foremost in our minds. We also had rising healthcare costs, which become even more important. We already were discussing debt and deficit issues. We had slower population growth. That became very important. And we also had global competition and emerging economies that were already starting to make a frontier. And on top of that, we added the severity and the recession, which made our labor market very difficult. We lost 9 million jobs, and we're only halfway to that number. We've only recovered only half of those jobs. And so as we talk about the unprecedented number of folks that are on the sidelines, that have difficulties getting back into the labor force, we have what is called structural unemployment, this idea that there's a mismatch between the skills of the unemployed and, of course, those that can't find a job in the job openings. We are moving more from a goods-producing to a service-oriented economy, and so many are falling out of the wayside, and in Jacksonville as well. In fact, in Jacksonville, some of the hardest hit areas have been in construction, have been in manufacturing, just like the nation. Now, as we look at the labor market, which we believe to be the most important component along with income growth, we will continue to see this transition in industries happen. We continue to see that industries in professional and business services, your actuarials, your engineers, your architects, those are where the jobs sit, and they will continue to be where the jobs are. Now, here's what's interesting in what we talk about in economic circles. There's this idea of a hollowing out of the middle class. And the idea is that the vast majority of the jobs are occurring at both ends of the spectrum and not in the middle. And so 63% of the jobs of the future are going to be with those that are lower skill and have lower education. Those are the types of jobs that will be available. And then also on the higher end, your higher education, your master's degrees, your college degrees, and of course your doctorates. And in the middle, folks that are middle-level managers, folks that have middle incomes, all of those types of jobs are starting to fall out. And this is why there's so much emphasis by both candidates of the middle income. Going back to the downturn, a big part of how many were able to enter the middle income or make middle income wages was, of course, through the housing boom. And we know firsthand here in Florida that, of course, the housing unwind impacted us dramatically. And so if we were to focus on what is happening in Jacksonville as it relates to these overall trends in the nation, we specifically know that we're starting to make progress. And specifically right here in Jacksonville, you have a number of health facilities. In fact, the health industry was the only industry that continued to add jobs during the downturn. We have the Mayo Clinic, of course, who definitely is one of the front runners in this effort. We also continue to see professional and business services add, and Jacksonville is starting to make make headway with home prices as well. And of course, the number of distressed transactions, or those foreclosures and short sales in Jacksonville in particular and in the nation, is starting to slow. So the housing bleed that we've had up until this point is starting to be patched. However, it's going to take a while in order for us to unwind. And so finally, in conclusion, so that you can get back to your jobs and your day, we are faced with a very serious economic forecast, economic conditions. 2013 is going to be slow. And as we look at our forecast for 2013, we think it will only grow at about 1.5%. And in 2014, we will continue to see this slow growth as well. We think the unemployment rate, regardless of where we sit, will continue to be very high, and the rest of the jobs that we talked about that fell out, it will probably take about 3 to 4 years before they are recovered. Now, there's a lot of good news that continues to happen. This is an economy that's in transition, and we're still very globally competitive. We still are globally competitive, and our partners are also starting to see a little bit of progress as well. We've always talked about the slowdown in China, and China being a critical part of our economic picture. Of course, our exports to China and our exports to the Eurozone are a big part of economic growth. But, of course, we're starting to see that China is starting to stabilize, and that will be good for the global economy as well. So all is not lost. Everyone is looking to the United States to see what we will do in this election. And in closing, please go out and remember to vote. Thank you so much.